Watch a child at the edge of the tide. The air is thick with salt and sunlight. The sea breathes in and out with a rhythm older than memory. Small hands dig into the wet sand, shaping towers and walls that glisten under the morning sun. Every motion is filled with purpose, scooping, patting, decorating the castle with tiny shells like jewels. The child doesn't rush. They don't worry about the waves that will soon erase everything they've built. They know. Deep down, they know the water will come. And yet, they build anyway. The tide begins to turn. A low hiss as the first thin fingers of foam slide forward, licking at the moat. The child watches, still smiling. The walls tremble, the towers sink, the sea reclaims its shore. And instead of despair, there is laughter. The child splashes into the foam, squealing with joy, and then begins again. The same hands, the same sand, the same faith. There is no protest, no outrage at the unfairness of impermanence, just pure creation, born of presence. The child doesn't build for forever, they build for now. But somewhere between childhood and now, we forgot how to do this. We forgot how to build with joy even when we know the tides will turn. We forgot how to trust the process when we cannot control the outcome. We forgot how to act as if everything works out for us. Not because we're naive, but because we once understood something deeper than fear. As adults, we grow obsessed with permanence. We demand guarantees before we begin. We hesitate before the first step, waiting for the world to promise us success before we lift a single handful of sand. We want certainty before creation, and in doing so, we lose the very spirit that made creation possible. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He wasn't writing to impress anyone. Those words were never meant for history. They were private reminders in his journal, whispered to himself when life pressed too hard. He knew that the tides of life will always return, washing away our plans, our comfort, our illusions of control. But he also knew that if we meet those tides with courage instead of fear, with trust instead of panic, then the wave that destroys can also be the wave that reveals the shore beneath. That's what this teaching is about. Not changing the waves, but changing how you meet them. Not escaping difficulty, but learning to let difficulty work for you. Not controlling what happens, but mastering your response to what happens. Imagine living with that kind of trust, so deep that panic becomes foreign to you. Imagine moving through uncertainty with the calm of someone who knows, really knows, that they are being guided even when the path looks dark. Imagine becoming the kind of person who doesn't just survive the storm, but uses the storm to grow stronger. This isn't fantasy, it's philosophy in action. Stoicism, lived rather than studied. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Every wave, every fall, every seeming loss, it's friction shaping you into something stronger, something luminous. But you must choose to meet life that way. You must choose to act as if everything is working out for you, even when the evidence hasn't arrived yet. That's the decision that changes everything. Not because it magically makes life easier, but because it transforms how you interpret what happens. It's the shift from resistance to acceptance, from anxiety to alignment, from fear to faith. So before we begin this journey through the 7 Stoic principles that will help you embody this way of living, pause for a moment, breathe. Look at the tide that's approaching your life right now. The uncertainty, the chaos, the delays, the losses. What if, instead of fearing the wave, you trusted it? What if this too was building you? The child at the shore doesn't bargain with the sea. They build, they lose, and they build again. Not because they believe the castle will last, but because they trust the act itself is enough. And that's the secret we're about to reclaim together. If this message already stirs something in you, take a moment, not out of habit, but out of alignment. Like the child who builds with joy, build this moment with intention. Tap the like button as a declaration, I build with trust. Share this with someone who's forgotten how to believe, and in the comments type with conviction, it works for me, because it does. Even when you can't see it yet, it's already working. The tide doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to return you to who you truly are. And from here, we begin. Principle 1. Trust the timing, not the timeline. We live in a world ruled by invisible clocks. Somewhere along the way, someone told us there's a right time for everything. Get the degree by 22, find love by 30, achieve success before your hair turns gray. These clocks tick louder than our own heartbeat, whispering that we're behind, that we've failed some unseen race. But whose race is it really? Who decided when your story should unfold? Every day we scroll through highlights, people getting promoted, engaged, richer, happier. The dopamine hits in our brains spark tiny comparisons. Why not me? Why not now? It's an endless loop of instant gratification, the modern illusion that if it doesn't happen fast, it isn't happening at all. We've trained our nervous system to crave speed instead of depth, progress instead of presence. But life doesn't follow your schedule. It never did. It follows seasons, and seasons never rush. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Part of that mastery is releasing the illusion that you control time. You don't. You never did. What you control is how you show up in this moment, with patience, intention, and quiet trust that the unseen timeline might be wiser than yours. Think of the seed buried in the soil. It doesn't demand proof of spring. It simply rests in darkness, trusting that warmth will come. But imagine if the seed had your anxiety. It would dig itself up every morning to check if it's growing, to measure its progress against the oak tree beside it. It would suffocate under its own impatience. You laugh. But isn't that what we do? We question our own growth daily, dissecting our progress, comparing our roots to someone else's fruit. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything that happens happens as it should, and if you observe carefully, you will find this to be so." The Stoics understood that our suffering often begins when we fight the natural rhythm of things. When we try to bloom in winter, we call it failure. When we rest during planting season, we call it laziness. But the truth is, life is cyclical, not linear. There are moments to act and moments to allow, moments to sprint and moments to stay still. The wise understand the difference. And yet our modern world glorifies urgency. We want results on demand, same-day delivery for dreams. We scroll, we refresh, we panic. Neuroscience explains this well. The brain's reward center fires dopamine not from achieving goals, but from anticipating them. That's why we're addicted to progress bars, likes, updates. It's not the goal we crave, but the illusion of movement. The tragedy is, this constant chase disconnects us from life's natural rhythm. We stop hearing its quiet whisper. Be here. Trust this moment. When you act as if everything works out for you, you step out of the race. You stop fighting the pace of your journey. You no longer measure your chapter 3 against someone else's chapter 20. You start realizing that delays aren't denials. They're detours written by a wiser hand. The job that didn't come through might have spared you from a toxic environment. The relationship that ended might have freed you for a love you couldn't have imagined. The dream that failed might have taught you the exact lesson you needed for the one that will flourish. Life often withholds what you think you want, so it can prepare you for what you're truly meant for. But you can only see this truth in hindsight, and hindsight requires patience. Seneca reminded us, time discovers truth, and if time reveals truth, then rushing it only blinds you. Picture yourself standing in a hallway of closed doors. Every handle you try feels locked, every path uncertain. Panic tells you to bang on the doors, to scream, to run. But trust invites you to wait, to breathe, to realize that the right door doesn't need force. It opens when the moment is aligned, not when your anxiety commands it to. Listen to the voice of your impatience, the one that says you're wasting time. Ask it quietly, whose time? The clock on your wall measures seconds. The clock of the universe measures growth. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be, ripening in unseen ways. Marcus wrote again, "Do not be anxious about the future. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same reason that now arms you against the present." That's the Stoic secret to peace. To trust that tomorrow is not your concern until it arrives. To stop postponing your joy until everything aligns perfectly. Maybe this season of delay isn't punishment. Maybe it's preparation. Maybe the pause is protecting you from outcomes you can't yet understand. Maybe the silence is not absence, but incubation. Every oak tree was once a seed buried in faith. Every butterfly was once a creature dissolving in darkness. Every transformation begins with the patience to endure unseen progress. So when the voice of hurry rises inside you, whisper back, "Not yet," does not mean never. When envy stirs, remember, another's timeline is not proof of your failure. It's proof that timing exists. And when doubt creeps in, remind yourself, the universe doesn't run late. Trusting the timing doesn't mean sitting still. It means working with intention but without desperation, acting from faith, not fear. It means showing up each day as if what's meant for you is already moving toward you, because it is. And maybe life's delays aren't denials at all. Maybe they're divine timing disguised as detours. Maybe the tide that seems to pull everything away is only preparing to return it in a new form. If you feel that truth in your bones, not as a theory, but as a quiet knowing, write it in the comments below, not for the algorithm, but as an act of alignment. I'm exactly where I need to be, because you are. And once you start trusting that, everything begins to move, not faster but better. Principle 2. Reframe every setback as setup. There comes a moment for everyone. A moment when everything you built, everything you dreamed of, collapses. The job you thought was secure disappears overnight. The person you trusted walks away without warning. The plan that felt so certain suddenly unravels in your hands. And in that silence after the fall, one question echoes louder than all the rest. Why is this happening to me? But what if that's the wrong question? What if the real question is, what is this making possible for me? The Stoics had a word for this mindset, amor fati, the love of fate. Not mere acceptance, not passive resignation, but genuine, wholehearted love for everything that happens. The triumphs, the tragedies, the interruptions, the endings. Friedrich Nietzsche later echoed it when he said, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati," that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. To the Stoic, loving your fate doesn't mean pretending it's pleasant. It means trusting that even pain has purpose. It means standing inside your storm and saying, "I may not understand it now, but I trust it's working for me, not against me." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." That is amor fati in action. The unshakable belief that even the debris becomes fuel, that even the ashes can light your next path. But most people fight their fate. They resist what is, and in doing so, they double their suffering. Pain is inevitable. Resistance is optional. Every time we say, "This shouldn't have happened," we're choosing to relive it over and over again. You can't change the event, but you can change your interpretation of it. Take the story of the old farmer. His horse runs away. The neighbors say, "Such bad luck." The farmer simply replies, "Maybe." Days later, the horse returns, bringing with it a herd of wild horses. "Such good luck," the neighbors cheer. "Maybe," the farmer says again. The farmer's son tries to tame one of the wild horses and breaks his leg. "Such terrible luck," the neighbors say. "Maybe," replies the farmer. Soon after, war breaks out, and all the young men are drafted, except the farmer's son, because of his injury. The neighbors cry, "Such good luck." And the farmer, wise as ever, simply says, "Maybe." That's Stoicism in a single story. What looks like tragedy today might reveal itself as preparation tomorrow. The problem isn't the event, it's our premature labeling of it as bad. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." When you reframe your setbacks, you start to see that they were never punishments, they were training. Picture a modern story. A man builds a startup with everything he has: sleepless nights, sacrifices, belief. Then, failure. Investors pull out. The company collapses. He loses everything. For months he spirals, shame, doubt, exhaustion. But in that space of ruin, he learns what no classroom could teach: leadership under pressure, humility in defeat, the anatomy of resilience. 2 years later, He launches again, stronger, wiser, and that second venture becomes his breakthrough. He says later, "If I had succeeded the first time, I'd still be that arrogant boy who didn't know how to listen, or a woman who loved deeply, only to be betrayed." Heart shattered, she retreats into silence, certain she'll never trust again. But time, reflection, and solitude show her something profound. She didn't lose love. She lost illusion. The heartbreak cracked her open to a deeper form of strength, one rooted not in needing others but in knowing herself. This is the art of reframing, not spiritual bypassing, not pretending it didn't hurt, but saying, "This pain is shaping me." You can grieve and still have hope. You can hurt and still hold faith. You can be in pieces and still be becoming something whole. Imagine sitting across from your own reflection, speaking softly to yourself. "I know you didn't want this. I know this wasn't the plan. But maybe, just maybe, this is not the end. Maybe this is the setup for something you can't see yet." The mind resists this truth at first. It clings to control. But the moment you begin to see your pain as purposeful, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstance and start becoming a student of life. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That single sentence contains the seed of freedom. Because if your response holds power, then your setbacks lose their authority over you. Think about the caterpillar inside its cocoon. If someone tried to help it by cutting it open too soon, it would never develop the strength to fly. The struggle isn't punishment, it's preparation. Your life works the same way. Every obstacle builds a muscle you'll need for your next ascent. Every closed door refines your direction. Every rejection protects your path. Even neuroscience supports this truth. The human brain grows through neuroplastic stress, adaptation triggered by challenge. Without resistance, the mind never rewires. Without pressure, there's no evolution. So when life pushes you to your limits, don't rush to escape it. Pause. Ask yourself, what if this setback is the very condition I prayed for, disguised as discomfort? And then sit in that question long enough for your perspective to stretch. Marcus Aurelius again reminds us, the universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. When you decide that your setbacks are setups, the entire texture of your life changes. You stop flinching at difficulty and start searching for the hidden gift buried within it. Maybe the rejection letter redirected you to your real calling. Maybe the silence after heartbreak is the space where self-love can finally speak. Maybe the loss isn't loss at all, but redirection in disguise. The truth is, life rarely gives you what you want when you want it. It gives you what you need when you're ready to grow through it. So the next time something falls apart, remember this. The collapse is not chaos. It's choreography. You're not being broken. You're being built. Look at your pain not as punishment, but as prophecy. Look at your detours not as delays, but as directions. Look at your failures not as endings, but as education. And then, act as if everything is still working. Because it is. If you're ready to start seeing your setbacks differently, not as curses, but as callings, take a breath and anchor it in this moment. Comment below, not for the algorithm, but for your own declaration. Setback is setup. Because once you begin to believe that, even your scars start to look like maps, and every fall becomes a step closer to your becoming. Principle 3. Surrender control, strengthen trust. Control is the most seductive illusion we chase. We tell ourselves that if we plan hard enough, prepare long enough, and worry deeply enough, we can bend life into our shape. We grip the steering wheel tighter, convinced that tension equals safety. We call it being responsible, but in truth, most of our control is just fear in disguise. The Stoics saw this clearly 2,000 years ago. They called it the dichotomy of control. The simple but profound realization that life is divided into two realms. What is up to us and what is not. Everything outside that boundary, other people's actions, the outcomes of our efforts, the timing of events, belongs to the universe, not to us. Everything within that boundary, our thoughts, our choices, our responses, belongs to us completely. Epictetus wrote, "Some things are in our control, and others not. It is only the things that are in our control that concern us." That sentence, if lived, can free a lifetime of suffering. But most of us blur the line. We take ownership of things that were never ours to carry. We try to control outcomes, emotions, timing, people, even the way others see us. And when reality refuses to obey our expectations, we call it failure. Seneca once warned, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Think about that. Most of what keeps you awake at night isn't what is happening, it's what might happen. You play out arguments that never occur, fear losses that never arrive, and live entire lifetimes inside imagined disasters. You exhaust yourself trying to control versions of the future that don't even exist. This illusion of control is everywhere. You plan your career down to the exact year of success, and panic when the timeline shifts. You map out every step of a relationship, and crumble when the other person changes direction. You obsess over every detail of a project, and when a single thing goes wrong, it feels like the universe betrayed you. You try to hold life like water in your fist, only to realize that the tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. So what if you loosened your grip? Imagine cupping your hands instead. Open, steady, receptive. The water stays, it moves, it glimmers, it flows, but it doesn't vanish. That's how trust feels. Not passive, not lazy, but open. It's the quiet strength of someone who knows that control is overrated, but participation is everything. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." That's the balance, not detachment, but wholehearted acceptance. You give your best effort, then release your obsession with how it must unfold. You commit deeply to the process but surrender the outcome. Control says, "It has to happen this way." Trust whispers, "It will happen the right way." Picture this. A woman mapping her entire life on a vision board. Career milestones, relationship goals, timelines for every dream. For years, everything aligns. Then, a layoff, a breakup, a medical diagnosis. The board shatters. At first, she spirals because she'd built her identity around control. But slowly, as the noise settles, she starts to see something unexpected emerging. The layoff pushes her toward the creative path she'd always been afraid to try. The breakup teaches her self-worth. The diagnosis teaches her presence. Months later, she says quietly, "I lost control, but I found peace." That's the paradox. The moment you stop demanding control, you gain real power, the power of calm presence. Seneca called this the serenity that comes from aligning with nature. He meant that when you stop fighting the natural flow of life, its rhythm, its uncertainty, its impermanence, you discover a peace no achievement can buy. Control is the need to predict. Trust is the courage to participate. The river doesn't panic when it meets a rock. It simply flows around it. The sky doesn't resist the storm. It holds space for it to pass. The tree doesn't cling to its leaves. When autumn comes, it lets them fall, not in fear of losing, but in faith that spring will return. That's surrender, not weakness. Wisdom. Surrender doesn't mean you stop acting. It means you stop acting from fear. It means you give your best, then release your attachment to the result. You still study, work, plan, love, but you no longer chain your peace to how those things turn out. Epictetus taught, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." It's the art of doing your part fully, then handing the rest back to life. Think of it this way. The sailor can steer the ship, but he cannot control the wind. The gardener can plant the seed, but she cannot command the rain. The artist can create the masterpiece, but cannot dictate who will love it. The power lies in showing up, in steering, planting, creating, and then trusting that what happens next is what's meant to happen. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving over to something larger, wiser, unseen. And the moment you surrender control, something shifts in your body. Your shoulders drop. Your breath deepens. The constant mental noise begins to fade. You realize how much of your energy was wasted wrestling with what was never yours to hold. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this freedom when he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's the moment of liberation, realizing you always had a choice, not over events, but over meaning. So when things don't go your way, don't ask, "How can I control this?" Ask instead, "How can I cooperate with this?" Don't demand the path to be straight. Trust that the detours are part of the map. And when fear rises, fear of failure, of loss, of uncertainty, breathe and repeat quietly to yourself, "I let go of what's not mine. I trust what's meant for me." Because what's meant for you will never miss you. And what misses you was never meant to stay. That's the essence of surrender. Not indifference, but intimacy with life. You stop fighting the current and start flowing with it, learning that the river knows the way better than the swimmer does. So let go of what's not yours to carry. Trust the process, and in that release you'll find what control could never give you: peace. Principle 4. Act with certainty even in uncertainty. There's a particular paralysis that grips us when the path ahead disappears into fog. We stand there, hesitant, restless, waiting for a sign that never comes. We tell ourselves we need more information, more clarity, more guarantees before we take the first step. But life doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards movement. The truth is simple but hard to accept. Certainty is not something you find. It's something you build, one step at a time. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." He didn't say, "First know how everything will work out." He said, "Decide who you are, then act." Because clarity doesn't precede action, it follows it. Think of a child learning to walk. They don't wait until they're certain they won't fall. They fall dozens of times, knees bruised, balance shaky, eyes wide with fear and curiosity. Yet something deep inside them insists, "Keep going." And eventually, their tiny steps carve new patterns in the brain, neural pathways that say, "You can do this." They didn't wait for confidence before moving. Confidence came from moving. That's how life works. Your brain isn't wired to give you certainty before you act. It gives you certainty because you act. Neuroscience calls it embodied cognition, the understanding that the body teaches the mind what is possible. Each decision you make sends feedback to your nervous system, rewriting the story of who you believe yourself to be. The more you act with conviction, the more your mind begins to believe it. Seneca once wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." We wait for fear to fade before taking action, not realizing that action itself is the cure. Fear doesn't vanish in the waiting. It grows roots there. But the moment you take even one step forward, it loses power. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, staring at the rope bridge that stretches across a canyon. The wind howls, the bridge sways. Your thoughts whisper, "What if it breaks? What if I fall?" You could stand there forever analyzing the angles, calculating probabilities, waiting for the shaking to stop. But the bridge doesn't steady until you step on it. It becomes firm because of your weight. That's how certainty works. It appears underfoot only when you move. Now picture a tightrope walker stepping into the void. Their heart races, muscles tense, mind sharp. They don't focus on what might go wrong. They focus on each breath, each movement, the line beneath their feet. Their certainty isn't in the absence of risk. It's in their presence of focus. They walk not because the rope guarantees safety, but because they've trained themselves to trust their balance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's life is dyed the color of his thoughts." If you believe the world is unstable, your actions will tremble. But if you choose to believe the path will hold, your steps become stronger. And that strength in turn makes the path stable. Let's bring this down to real life. You want to start a business, but you're afraid it might fail. You want to leave the relationship that's draining you, but you're terrified of being alone. You want to speak your truth, but you're scared of judgment. So you wait. You gather more information, more advice, more reasons to delay. You convince yourself it's wisdom, but often it's fear disguised as preparation. And in that waiting, life passes you by. Action is faith embodied. It's saying, I don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. In cognitive neuroscience, there's something called action precedes emotion. It means your behaviors can reprogram how you feel. Walk confidently, and your brain begins to register confidence. Speak calmly, and your nervous system starts to relax. Act brave, and the body teaches the mind bravery. You literally become what you practice. Epictetus also said, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. That's what the Stoics understood, that truth only becomes real when it's lived. Picture two voices in your mind. One says, wait until you're ready. The other says, you become ready by starting. One feeds your fear, the other builds your faith. Which one you listen to decides the quality of your life. The Stoics trained themselves to act, not react, to move forward even when the world was uncertain. They believed that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move with fear as a companion. Aurelius once reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Beyond that, he didn't demand assurance, only integrity. Act rightly, and let the outcome be what it may. Imagine if you carried that mindset into every part of your life. When doubt whispers, what if it doesn't work? You answer, what if it does? When fear says, you're not ready, you answer, I'll grow into readiness. When uncertainty surrounds you, you plant your feet and move anyway, because your direction matters more than your doubts. The irony is that the people we admire most, the inventors, the leaders, the artists, the warriors, they all faced the same fog. They didn't know if it would work. They acted anyway. Their certainty wasn't inherited, it was constructed through courage, one decision at a time. You don't wait for the storm to clear before you set sail. You set sail and learn to steer through it. You don't wait for the fear to vanish before you speak. You speak, and your voice steadies with each word. You don't wait for the perfect plan before you act. You act, and the plan reveals itself as you go. Marcus Aurelius wrote, never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. That's Stoic certainty, not predicting what will happen, but trusting you'll have what it takes when it does. So stop waiting for the fog to lift. Step forward and let your footsteps carve the path. Let courage be your compass, not clarity. And when the doubts return, as they always will, speak these words as a quiet vow to yourself. I am certain. Not because you know how the story ends, but because you've decided that uncertainty will no longer own you. So if you're done waiting for perfect clarity, if you're ready to build your confidence one step at a time, declare it now. Type it as a promise, not to me, but to your own becoming. I am certain, because the moment you decide that, life begins to move out of your way. Principle 5. Find the gift in every moment. Life hides its treasures in strange places. Sometimes in silence, sometimes in heartbreak, sometimes in the exact moment you're certain nothing good could possibly come from what you're living through. Yet, if you look closely enough, there's always a glimmer, a lesson, a whisper, a small fragment of gold buried in the dark. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, when you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. He wasn't speaking from comfort. He wrote those words while ruling an empire drowning in war, plague, and betrayal. And yet, he chose gratitude. Not because his days were easy, but because his mind was disciplined to see the gift, even when the world offered only struggle. Every morning you're handed the same invitation, to see the gift or miss it, to complain about what's lacking or to notice what remains, to curse the pressure or to let it polish you. Seneca said, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. Pressure is not punishment, it's preparation. The friction you feel right now is not meant to destroy you, but to refine you. Just as coal becomes diamond through time and heat, so too your soul becomes luminous through difficulty. But the question is, can you hold your gaze long enough to see the transformation happening? Because most people run from discomfort. They numb it, fight it, distract themselves from it. They believe happiness lives somewhere in the future, on the other side of ease. But the Stoics knew something deeper, that peace isn't found in avoiding pain. It's found in understanding it. Imagine this. You lose a job you loved. You feel lost, discarded, uncertain. At first it feels like failure, but months later, that loss becomes a doorway. You start something of your own, something more aligned with who you truly are. Looking back, you realize the job wasn't taken from you. It was released from you, so you could grow beyond it. Or you face rejection. Someone you cared for deeply chooses another path. Your heart aches. Nights feel endless. But through that grief, you learn your own worth wasn't theirs to define. You discover that solitude can be sacred, that peace can exist without permission. What you once called rejection becomes redirection, proof that not every closed door is cruelty. Some are mercy. Or maybe you've burned out. The body collapses under the weight of ambition. You're forced to stop. At first it feels like weakness, but in that stillness, you rediscover your own humanity. You remember what it means to rest, to breathe, to live without racing the clock. What felt like breakdown becomes breakthrough. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, the universe is change. Life is opinion. Change is the only constant, but how you interpret change determines whether it feels like chaos or creation. Finding the gift doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It means holding space for both truth and trust at the same time. Yes, this hurts. And yes, it's shaping me. Yes, I lost something. And yes, something new is being born in its place. Yes, I'm tired. And yes, I'm still growing. That's emotional maturity, the ability to hold pain in one hand and gratitude in the other, without letting either cancel the other out. Tonight, when the noise fades, ask yourself, what was today's gift? Maybe it was a stranger's smile. Maybe it was a lesson hidden in a conversation that didn't go your way. Maybe it was a moment of stillness you didn't plan for, but needed. Maybe it was simply the strength you found to keep going when you wanted to quit. When you ask this question daily, you start rewiring your brain. Neuroscientists call it attentional bias. Your mind automatically looks for what you train it to see. Most people scan for problems. Stoics scan for purpose. The more you search for gifts, the more they appear, not because life changed, but because you did. Epictetus taught, he is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. The Stoics weren't blind to pain. They just refused to let pain blind them to everything else. Here's a truth that humbles even the strongest minds. You don't always recognize the gift while you're inside it. Sometimes the lesson hides in years of distance. The heartbreak that cracked you open becomes the reason you can love deeply again. The failure that humiliated you becomes the foundation for your wisdom. The silence that once haunted you becomes the space where your real voice finally emerges. Coal doesn't resist becoming diamond. It doesn't fight the heat or curse the darkness. It simply endures, and in that endurance, it transforms. So do you. You can resist the fire, or you can let it forge you. The next time something breaks your rhythm, pause before labeling it bad. Instead, whisper to yourself, there's a gift here, even if I can't see it yet. That sentence alone can change your state. It moves you from resistance to curiosity, from despair to discovery. Because everything that happens to you is also happening for you, if you have the eyes to see it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs? He understood that the pattern of life is intricate, mysterious, and precise. Even the threads of loss are woven into the design of your becoming. So when you wake tomorrow, try this simple Stoic ritual. Before you touch your phone, before you check the world, breathe deeply and ask, what gift am I willing to notice today? It could be as grand as a breakthrough or as small as sunlight through the window. The size doesn't matter. The awareness does. Life is generous to those who look closely. If you're choosing to see light where others see only shadow, if you're ready to believe that even pain can be a teacher, anchor that truth in the comments below, not as performance, but as practice. I see the gift. Because once you train yourself to find gifts in ordinary moments, you stop waiting for happiness. You start living it, one lesson, one sunrise, one breath at a time. Principle 6. Respond, don't react. There is a space, a small sacred space between what happens to you and what you do about it. Most people never find that space. They live entirely in reaction, pulled like puppets by every emotion, every insult, every unexpected turn. Someone cuts them off in traffic, and rage ignites before thought. A text goes unanswered, and their mind spirals into stories. A plan changes, and frustration spills over. They hand away their peace to every passing moment, not realizing it was theirs to keep all along. The Stoics built their entire philosophy around protecting that space. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, carried that truth into the darkest corners of human history. In his book Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl described his years in Nazi concentration camps. Everything was taken from him: his freedom, his family, his work, even his name. He was reduced to a number, stripped of identity. But inside that horror, he discovered one thing the guards could not take: his ability to choose his response. He wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Imagine that. A man surrounded by death and despair, still finding freedom in the smallest human act, choosing how to meet reality. Frankl's discovery wasn't philosophical, it was survival. It was Stoicism embodied. Marcus Aurelius mirrored this centuries earlier when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." What Frankl lived, Marcus understood. That power doesn't come from control. It comes from composure. Now fast forward to our world. You don't live in a camp, but your nervous system reacts to triggers as if you do. You scroll through social media and see something that offends you. Your amygdala, the brain's ancient alarm system, fires instantly. "Attack!" it screams. A coworker takes credit for your work. Your blood surges. Your chest tightens. Words form before wisdom can. Your partner says something sharp. And instead of listening, you prepare your defense. Modern life gives us more triggers than ever before, and technology amplifies every one of them. But the Stoic art remains the same: to pause before the reflex, to respond from reason instead of reaction. Neuroscience now confirms what the Stoics practiced, that the prefrontal cortex, the rational, wise part of your brain, needs about 6 seconds to engage after a trigger. The amygdala reacts instantly. The Stoic discipline of pause and breathe isn't just poetic, it's neurological mastery. When you breathe deeply before reacting, you interrupt the panic loop and give your wiser brain time to take command. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Every trigger is a test, a chance to prove who you are becoming. Imagine yourself in one of those moments. Someone insults you online. You feel the heat rise, the fingers twitch, ready to type a reply meant to wound. Pause, breathe. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice your heartbeat. Ask silently, who do I want to be in this moment? Not what do I want to win, but who do I want to be? That pause is where wisdom lives. That's the stillness before precision, the martial artist's calm before the strike. In combat, reacting blindly means defeat. The master doesn't rush. They read their opponent's energy. They move only when movement serves purpose. They let chaos burn itself out and respond with intention. That's how you must meet life. When the world throws its chaos at you, meet it not with noise, but with stillness. Not with panic, but with poise. The Stoics called this ataraxia, the unshakable calm born from self-control. In that stillness, you regain your power. Because reaction is slavery. Response is sovereignty. Think about how often you've reacted and regretted it later. The message you wish you hadn't sent. The words you can't unsay. The argument that escalated because you met fire with fire. You can't undo the reaction, but you can learn the art of response. Next time you're triggered, try this simple Stoic practice. 1. Pause. Do nothing for 3 breaths. 2. Feel. Name what's happening. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm afraid. Naming creates distance. It reminds you that you are not your emotion. You are the awareness experiencing it. 3. Ask. What would my higher self do here? The one who believes everything works out. The one who values peace more than victory. 4. Respond. Speak, act, or walk away, not from impulse, but from intention. This single habit will change everything. Your relationships, your confidence, your peace. Marcus Aurelius advised himself, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But I cannot be harmed by them, for no one can degrade me without my consent. He wasn't predicting misery, he was preparing mastery. He knew that foreseeing friction gave him time to choose calm. This is how you become unshakable, not because nothing bothers you, but because nothing controls you. The martial artist's stillness isn't weakness, it's discipline. The calm before precision is where power lives. You too can cultivate that composure. When someone throws chaos your way, don't mirror it, transform it. Someone brings you anger, respond with clarity. Someone brings you fear, respond with faith. Someone brings you confusion, respond with silence. You can't always choose the storm, but you can choose to be the calm within it. Frankl found that calm in a death camp. You can find it in traffic, in arguments, in moments of rejection. It's the same human power scaled to your life. So take a moment now. Close your eyes. Breathe in slowly through your nose. Feel your body grounded, your thoughts quieting. Breathe out, letting the tension go. This is the space. This is where your power begins. And when the next storm comes, and it will, remember, reaction belongs to the old you. Response belongs to the new you. Choose who you want to be in that gap between stimulus and response, because that gap is where freedom lives. If this message reaches you, if you're ready to master your reactions and reclaim your peace, write it below, not for me, but for yourself. I choose peace. Because peace isn't something the world gives you, it's something you decide to keep. And now, we return to where it all began, to the edge of the tide, where a child once built a castle knowing the waves would come. That image was never just about sand. It was a metaphor for life, for building, for losing, for rebuilding again, for learning to meet impermanence not with fear but with faith. Over the course of this journey, you've remembered what the Stoics always knew, that peace doesn't come from controlling the storm, but from learning to stand calmly within it. That life's wisdom isn't found in certainty, but in courage, patience, and trust. You've learned to trust the timing, not the timeline. To stop measuring your worth by invisible clocks. To understand that delays are not denials, but divine orchestration disguised as detours. You've learned to plant without obsession, to water your dreams without anxiety, to let life unfold in its own sacred rhythm. You've learned to reframe every setback as a setup, to meet endings as openings, to see rejection as redirection, to love fate not because it's kind, but because it's yours. You no longer ask, why me? You ask, what is this making possible for me? And that single shift has changed everything. You've learned to surrender control and strengthen trust, to stop clutching at outcomes you were never meant to own. You've loosened your grip on the need to control every detail and found freedom in the open hand. You've remembered what Seneca said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And in that realization, you've released 1,000 imaginary battles you never needed to fight. You've learned to act with certainty even in uncertainty, to take the first step even when the bridge isn't visible, to let courage precede confidence, to let movement build belief. You no longer wait for proof before you begin. You understand now, proof arrives through practice. You've learned to find the gift in every moment, to look for meaning beneath the mess, to find the lesson folded inside loss, to let gratitude coexist with grief. You've learned that life's pressure isn't punishment, it's polish. And just like coal becoming diamond, you've let the fire refine you into something unbreakable. You've learned to respond, not react, to pause between the trigger and the choice, to breathe before the storm inside takes over. You've found that sacred space Viktor Frankl spoke of, the space where freedom lives. You've become the calm within the chaos, the stillness before precision, the one who transforms energy instead of transmitting it. And finally, you've learned to become evidence of what you believe, to stop talking about faith and start walking it, to live like someone who truly trusts the process, to embody philosophy instead of quoting it. Because belief that isn't lived is just noise, and you were born to be proof, quiet, radiant, undeniable proof that everything truly does work out for those who live with intention, integrity, and trust. This is the transformation, from control to surrender, from fear to faith, from hurry to harmony, from doubt to direction, from surviving to becoming. You've traveled through these 7 Stoic principles not as abstract ideas but as living truths. They are no longer theories on a page, they are muscles in your spirit. Each one reshaped how you see, how you think, how you move through the world. And now, when the next wave comes, and it will, you won't panic. You'll smile, take a breath, and begin building again. Because you know now that the sea doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to teach you rhythm, to remind you that loss and renewal are not opposites. They are partners in creation. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The universe is change, life is opinion." And through that lens, you finally understand. It's never what happens that defines you, but what you decide it means. So decide that it all works out. Decide that every detour leads to destiny. Decide that every wave carries wisdom. And when you live that way, life bends to your belief. Because acting as if everything works out isn't denial. It's declaration. It's you standing in alignment with the flow of life itself. Calm, grounded, certain that what's meant for you is already on its way. Not because it's easy, but because it changes everything. Not because life promised to be smooth, but because you've chosen to trust it anyway. Not because the waves stopped coming, but because you've learned how to dance with them. So if this message spoke to your soul, if these words lit something inside you that you can't unsee, then take this final step with intention. Subscribe to True Stoic Way, where we turn philosophy into power and reflection into transformation. Because this isn't just a channel, it's a community of builders, of thinkers, warriors, and quiet revolutionaries who meet the tide with grace, who turn pain into practice, and who live as proof that wisdom isn't ancient. It's alive. And as the tide rolls back, you see the child again, kneeling in the sand, laughing as the waves erase her work. Then, without hesitation, she begins building once more. No fear, no resistance, only joy. That child is still in you, the builder, the believer, the one who knows the tide always returns, and so will you. So build again, trust again, begin again, because everything works out for you. It always has. It always will. If this message spoke to your soul, subscribe to True Stoic Way, where we turn philosophy into power and reflection into transformation.